दोस्तों, मैं हूं मदन सिंह, आपका दोस्त, और मैं आपके साथ बात करने वाला हूं on some very important topic. We are going to talk on the situation which is developing in India after the end of the 3-day war. After the war ended, thanks to Pakistan having thrown in the towel, because that's the actual fact. What's happened is that Pakistan is really worried, what's going to happen. And then there was pressure from Donald Trump. And the background is that Donald Trump had told the Pakistani Prime Minister, and that is, you're going to get $3.2 billion as a trashy to get over your problem. But before that, you're going to agree to a ceasefire. And that is how the Director of Military Operations rang up the Indian counterpart and offered a ceasefire. That's how it really happened. And India accepted. And Donald took the credit for it. And if you look at it in a little bit of a dispassionate way, I think Donald Trump did bring about the ceasefire. Let's accept the fact. But he's the one who put pressure on Pakistan. And Pakistan made the proposal to India and they agreed for a ceasefire. I mean, vicariously, it is what the Americans did, which has to be accepted. Of course, there were some flaws in the American approach, and I will highlight those. First of all, they were equating India with Pakistan. Now, that's not really correct. You can't equate a terrorist state with a republic like India. And Shashi Tharoor, one of the top Congress leaders, has come out in support of Modi and said that, well, what the government was doing correct. So that's something that's very nice, because the opposition, apart from the Congress, I think is all united behind Narendra Modi. That's a very wonderful thing. And now, the government has got 6 important parliamentary committees of eminent citizens. That also includes Awasi and Salman Khurshid from the opposition, and they're going to go all around the world to explain the Indian point of view. It's a good thing. It's a good thing, but that's not going to help, I can tell you, because the mindset of the Western powers, in particular the United States and Western Europe, you can't change that. And they are, from their point of view, correct, because Pakistan has been there alive for the last 71 years. That's a long time. And India was not alive for a long, long time. And now, despite Narendra Modi wanting to side up with the Americans, I don't think the Americans are really that much interested, because they're more worried about India than ever. Ever since the Indian economy has gone to over $4 trillion, the Americans are getting worried, And so, I think they are going through all the tricks of the trade, that is trying to equate India with Pakistan, and of course, trying to reel India by saying that we organized the ceasefire. I think the best thing in this course of action would have been to accept the American plea that they brought about the ceasefire. In a way, it's correct, as I've already pointed out. But obviously, it's very hurting to India, because India had the upper hand in the battle. But then the question arises, if India had the upper hand in the battle, what was the need of an immediate ceasefire? Why couldn't the battle continue for another 4 days or 5 days and have a ceasefire after that? I think there are very big questions which are difficult to answer, because probably Modi must have realized that not a single country in the world has condemned Pakistan for this venture, which again I think a failure of Indian diplomacy. Now, if I go through the charts of Modi for the last 7 years, other than the fact that in 2020 he didn't make a trip abroad, other than that year he's made a total of, I think, 89 visits abroad, of which 11 times he went to the United States. And also one fact is that he met the Chinese president 19 times before the Galwan attack. So there are things. That means Modi could not convince the people he was meeting about what India stood for. That's the crux of the issue. Why he couldn't do it? There's so many other points, the way you might look at it. But the main factor is that America does not want India to rise up as a superpower. That's why they're feeding Pakistan, giving bread and butter to them, and also now feeding Bangladesh. Bangladesh, I think, is an eyesore for India, and I think it's a self-inflicted injury. As I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, we have got Section 65 of the Air Force Act, which says an act prejudicial to good order and air force discipline. And one of the cardinal principles included there is self-inflicted injury. That also comes under this act. Now, Bangladesh is in a similar position, a self-inflicted injury of India. It's not correct to keep blaming the Americans, they did this thing, they did that thing. Well, a superpower will do these things. Why should you accept it? Why don't you be proactive, be ready for it? Same thing like Muhammad Ghori coming to India 17 times and winning every battle. And then you say, Arey bhai, wo aaya and he won the battle and he beat us and he betrayed us. Well, it's the job of the enemy to betray you. They are not your friends. And Donald Trump is not India's friend. I've been repeatedly telling you he's the friend only of America. So, the Indians didn't know that Joe Biden, when he's president, was planning out a regime change in Bangladesh. And there was a lot of money being poured into Bangladesh by George Soros and the deep state. And the fact is, whatever you talk about Doval being a great man and all that, but he being the head of the Indian security operators should have known better. How come he didn't know that the Americans were planning a regime change? And it came so sudden that it was more of a surprise, I think, to Modi. He didn't know what the hell to do at that time. Vast crowds had congregated on Dhaka, and Sheikh Hasina's life was in danger. But at that time, there were some bold decisions required. And one of the bold decisions was to save the rule of Sheikh Hasina. That was important. And Indian troops should have been positioned there at that time. Sheikh Hasina should not only have been saved, but her throne also should have been saved. And the Indians didn't do anything like that. And then they quietly took Hasina away and then tried to be friends with Muhammad Yunus. And that's a fact. They placated him. Ambassador went and attended his swearing-in ceremony, which he shouldn't have done. And when you're opposing a man, you don't go and attend his swearing-in ceremony. But the Indians woke up when the attacks on the Hindus began, when Hindu girls were being abducted, and then of course one of the top Hindu leaders was arrested in Chittagong, and they continued. One of the, I think, famous Hindu temples in Dhaka was burnt. I think then the Indian government woke up to the fact. But even then, I think they were waiting for Donald Trump to take action. There was a fond belief in India that once Donald Trump comes to power and Biden goes home, he will take action in Bangladesh. Now, why should he take action in Bangladesh? Bangladesh is already, lackey of the Americans. If the Americans say jump, Muhammad Yunus will jump. So why should they try to throw him out? It's in India's interest to throw him out. And that was the critical moment, when India should have intervened in Bangladesh. After all, in 1971, India overran Bangladesh within 13 days, that is the erstwhile East Pakistan, when they had 90,000 troops. I think they had about 30,000 regulars and about 60,000 irregular other cars. I think Bangladesh got a much smaller force at the moment. I think the army numbers about 65 or 70,000. And this was the time to crack down. And there was a lot of support at that time in Bangladesh for Sheikh Hasina, because the Awami Party was gearing up its loins for a battle. And India should have done it. But then, the old saying, fortune favors the brave. And Modi was not brave enough to do it. And the best part was when the conference, and I have the press conference after Modi made his visit to America, and Donald Trump was asked a question about Bangladesh, and he said, well, I've left it to Modi to deal with it. Now, such a forthright statement should have been impetus, something like a lollipop for Modi, and the Indian army should have moved in there. The Air Force bombed the airfields, and then Sheikh Hasina should have been restored. But it didn't happen that way, and we have been sitting on the fence just trying to see how we can placate Muhammad Yunus and Bangladesh, and we can be friends like that, because Indians tried the same stunt in the Maldives, not realizing that the Maldives are basically Muslim and they don't like Indians at all. But Modi is gave them $1 million, which they couldn't get from China, and so you know what happened after that. They were forced to come back in the Indian fold. So Modi thought Bangladesh is going to come back like that, but it's not going to happen that way because Bangladesh is what we call a basket case. It's a very big country comparatively, and got about 200 million population, which is a lot of population. It's not a small country, but India has to act fast. By not acting, we cut our own legs. And now coming back to uh, the crisis, India is facing a very, very dangerous crisis, gentlemen. And China is fishing in troubled waters. I have a long time been of the opinion that the border settlement with China should have been done way back in the 60s when Chow and Lai came to Delhi and Nehru said no. And that has been a very dangerous answer to China. China fought a war with India on that, and China after that has been nibbling away at Indian territory. And if you remember, in 1947, India was this much, and it has now become this much. That means we lost a lot of territory after 1947, thanks to the leaders. And even in the 220 uh, Galwan clash, I think we gave away some territory to China, though Modi made an announcement that no Chinese Indian territory has been taken over by China. Well, he couldn't say it's been taken over, but that was just a empty statement. And the fact is, the Chinese have taken over a lot of territory of India, and India is not going to take it back. So, gentlemen, it's a very difficult world for India. And another difficulty is that India contracted for the Rafale fighters from France, and all the time Modi was thinking France is his friend. He would go and meet France and have a hearty embrace with Macron, and probably that was the signal that Modi thought, well, France is going to be my friend. But then everything, as I told you, that happened that way. And what really happened was when India wanted the source code of the raffle, the French refused, point blank. He said, we're going to give it to you. Why? He said, we have spent billions of dollars in developing this software. We can't just give it free. In other words, they wanted some very, very big amount, maybe a $1 or $2 billion to get the source code. Now, this is the Indian mistake. When they were negotiating to take over the fighters, the rifle, this was something the Indian negotiating team should have discussed with the French. Are you going to give us everything along with it, the software, the code? Nobody asked this question, and now you say France is not giving it to us. Why should they give it to you? That's the other point. Gentlemen, I've already mentioned earlier when I was doing the staff college course, and we'd come over to the HAL, the Aeronautics for a Study tour, and we were taken by the chief engineer and shown the Jaguar which is made in India. At that time, Jaguar was made in India, So he was very proud. He said, this thing, that thing, and 92% of the parts made in India. Wonderful. I was the only man who asked the chief engineer. I said, sir, what happened to the 8% parts which you say you don't make? What happens if they don't come from abroad? He was a little flabbergasted and he said, the plane doesn't fly. So just remember, gentlemen, that Atam Nirbhar is the limit. Otherwise, you keep spending your money for nothing. Like the Tejas fighter, you spend $1 or $2, $3 billion, I don't know what's on making the airframe. And if you don't have the engine and you're contracted with America for the GE company for the engine, and that's been delayed for over 2 years and not a single plane has been made. So what are the use of spending even money on the airframe when you don't have the engine? The first thing is to develop the technology of making an engine here in India And that's not an easy thing. The Chinese have done it. They do it by what is called reverse engineering. And that's also a highly sophisticated and technical thing. Don't take it easily. You have to have the capability to understand how you're going to do reverse engineering, how you're going to dismantle the engine from the top and then start making the parts. The Chinese took the Russian planes, the Su-35 and of course the Su-31, stripped them down and made their own. Now they have their fifth generation fighter which is running. I don't know how good it is, frankly, the Chengdu, uh, but it should be a good one. At least it's better than not having one and being dependent on, say, America or Russia or something to give you the manpower, like India is doing. And the sad part is the Indian uh, study which is going on to make the fifth generation fighter has planned to have it ready by 2035. I mean, you can just imagine. The Chinese, the Americans, and the Russians already have the plane, and we are planning to have it by 2035. So these are the points we must bear in mind, because it showed that the Indian genius is not really up to the mark, and there are reasons for it. There are very good reasons for it, but that's not the time. This is not the time to discuss them here. These are reasons which are rooted in our socio-economic atmosphere. Because there is one class of people who are being privileged, getting jobs, even if they don't qualify. So that's the government policy. Well, Modi and party can keep on clapping if they feel about it. I won't. I feel it's a detrimental thing. And I would like to draw the attention of the Indian leadership, the military leadership as well, as to why India lost the battles against the Arabs. That was because of a division of labor. The lower caste were not allowed to bear arms, and it was only the higher class, the warrior class called the Kshatriyas, which was supposed to fight. And when the Kshatriyas were defeated, there was no second line of defense. So every time the battle lost. I remember reading somewhere that the son of Muhammad Ghori, after he entered Western India with 200 horsemen, and he rode all the way fighting without any opposition and reached Nadia in Bengal. You can just imagine, it's a fact of history. Nobody opposed him at all. And he went back. So, gentlemen, this is the same thing. But the point is, India has put in a tremendous show as far as Pakistan is concerned. But then, this was not the time to stop the battle immediately. And that is why Donald Trump is really correct that he got brought about the ceasefire. Another thing we must remember is that America is the superpower in the world. And obviously, India wants to be friends with America. And India puts its eggs in the American basket. We became non-entities in the BRICS. And Russia and China wondering what the hell happened. And we were not giving wholehearted support to the SCO. We're not even going in for other organizations because we wanted to be with the Americans. And it's a bit of a surprise that Modi is so enamored of the Americans because for 10 years he didn't get a visa to America for alleged crimes. I'm not going to go that here. Another thing we must remember is that India is supposed to be a member of the Quad. The Quad is an organization to fight China, but India didn't take part in this organization. For the military concept, India didn't do it. And India was taking part in exercises against piracy and things like that. Obviously, the Western part thought, well, India is not really serious in fighting China. And anybody would think that way. So I think there could be a three-think now. But then even now, China is having a little of a thaw in India, a limited thaw, and that's been brought about the Americans because the Americans been siding with Pakistan. And Trump, of course, he sees everything from the American angle, and we see from our angle. We thought Trump is going to be a great friend, and he's going to be along our side. He's going to condemn Pakistan. But sad part is he didn't condemn Pakistan for the massacre. Even when he talked of the ceasefire, he called Pakistan a great nation like India. I mean, What sort of great nation is one which goes around killing innocent people? That means there is a flaw in the Indian propaganda, in the Indian information service, and that's why an excellent step has been taken to send a team of 7 people, 7 teams abroad to various places from Africa to Europe to the Far East, Japan, and America to explain the Indian point of view. But I wonder how efficient they'll be and will the West change its attitude. Because, to be very frank, the West, that is England, France, and Germany, including the Americans, know that the real culprit is Pakistan, and that killing in Pahalgam was engineered with inspiration from Pakistan. Well, they were inspiring it, though I will say that it was the locals who done it. But again, in one of some of my videos, I mentioned that fighting Pakistan is not an option. You're going to harm yourself. Your soldiers are going to get killed. Your civilians are going to get killed, and so many have been killed. I think more than 10, 20, 30 civilians are killed because of Pakistan shelling. And those who die, it's what an unfortunate thing for them. So instead of just trying to score browning points and say that we're going to attack Pakistan, there's no need for it. Modi needs to concentrate on sanitizing the valley. Why don't you sanitize the valley? And that's a more simpler task, and if required, you can have a house-to-house church, and anybody suspected needs to be arrested. And another thing is that you've got to have special laws in force at the moment. You can't have the normal laws continuing in this valley. So you've got to declare a form of military law or maybe martial law. You do that, that's the only way you can face the insurrection. You have martial law, and at the same time you've got to change the demographic face of the population. I hope you can understand what I mean by that. And the Chinese are doing that in the Uyghur province. The Uyghurs being reduced to a minority in Xinjiang. Chinese have done it. So if they can do it, why can't we? So then when India has got very inherent problems, and just I'm digressing, I will tell you, I have been going through some Pakistani videos of astrologers, and they are forecasting, giving dates, that India is going to break up. I don't believe it in anything. And similarly, the Indian astrologers, are giving forecasts and saying that Pakistan is going to break up. Now, who's going to break up, Pakistan or India? Frankly, I think Pakistan has a greater chance of breaking up because there is a big fight on in Balochistan, and the Baloch have declared independence as far as I know. And this is the time for India to help Balochistan. You have to take the risk, because if you do this, Pakistan is trying to help the Kashmiri insurrection. But if we are strong and we can sanitize the valley, I think things should be better. And having the CRPF or other forces in the valley, I think, is a waste. I have been in service. I've seen the efficiency of the CRPF and other central forces. In my opinion, they are not even trained, they are not motivated, and they are unfit for battle. I won't say more on it. So we'll have to train them better, make them tougher, something like the infantry regiments of the Indian Army. And why can't these fellows go and train with the Army regimental centers? So it's about time things were changed. Well, gentlemen, this is a kaleidoscopic picture I'm giving you about what's happening in the subcontinent. And yesterday was the 18th. It's a very important day as far as astrology is concerned. So many movements of the planets are taking place at that time. And many people have astrologers forecast that there's going to be a big change in India. Let's see what's going to happen. I don't know. I think I have an inkling, but I'm going to say that. I'm going to make it in the next video, so I have something to talk that time. Well, gentlemen, let's see what happens now. India, I don't think is going to start another war against Pakistan, though a lot of astrologers are saying कि अभी तो this Operation Sindoor has only been paused. Well, it may be paused, but I don't think it will start again because the world is against fighting. Even the Russians are going to have a ceasefire, and the uh, situation is going to be not very good for India to restart a battle against Pakistan. The entire world would get against us. And even if India stops the water supply to Pakistan, I don't think the world is going to back India. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. I hope you like this video. Share it with your friends and come back to me. I'll welcome your comments. In the meanwhile, I'll say goodbye. God bless and Jai Hind.